Hey everyone, it's Guy here with Win-Win Solutions with another video. But first, welcome to my channel. This channel is solely dedicated to finding solutions for your everyday problem. Now, this is part of the special video series that I'm doing, and this is a follow-up to the previous video that I put out. And why I believe, despite the mainstream media propagating for Biden and their skew lost touch with reality polls are dead wrong. I believe President Trump will not only going to win the electoral, but also has a chance to win the popular vote by a huge margin. Button. With that said and done, let's do it. As we all know, mainstream media polls got it wrong in 2016, and they are at it again in 2020. As you can see, this is CNN pollster recently too, October 26, 20. This is about a few days, 3 days, 4 days ago, and they had choice for president among likely voters, Biden up 12%, 54 to 42%. I don't know how they got this number, but this is what they're at, at it again in a sense. So as we all know, 2016 they predicted the mainstream pollster obviously forecasting that Hillary is going to win 90-something% of the time, and as we look at this site here, 538, this is the main aggregate of all the mainstream media pollster or mainstream media polls. As you can see, 90 out of 100 for Biden, 10 out of 100. So Biden's favored to win the election. So as you can see how it is skewed. I mean, if you look at some of these numbers, it's ridiculous in that sense. So I did a piece on the Trafalgar Group and why their pollster is more accurate. Actually, they predicted the 2006 Trump victory to the T, to the electoral vote. So you might want to check out that video that I did. This is just a quick overview of why I think their polls got it wrong this time. So close to election now, a few days away, but they still not changing their tune. In essence, they're still going with whatever they have here, and I'm here to debunk that and why I think the poll is wrong. Let's look at Jim Riker, and you don't have to take my word for it. Jim Riker. Let's listen to what he has to say.
Forecast for the 2020 election, the one that's coming up in a few weeks. So you'll see it right now. By the way, Joe Biden is way ahead in the polls. But on the same date in 2016, Hillary Clinton was ahead in the polls by an even greater amount, and she lost. So what's wrong with the polls? That's the first question. And the answer, there's a lot wrong. First of all, in the United States, not everyone is registered to vote. So there is a category, there's all adults, if you want to start there. Then category called registered voters. Well, obviously registered voters would give you a better sample than all voters because you have to be registered or else you can't vote. But even among registered voters, only about half of Americans actually vote. So there's a third category called likely voters, where the pollster says to you, are you, okay, you're registered, that's fine. Did you vote in the last 3 elections? Do you plan to vote in this election? Well, if you say yes to all that, they'll put you in the likely voter category. So right there, when you get the polls, you have to go to the source. You have to read the fine print, and you have to ask yourself, were you polling all adults, registered voters, or likely voters? Only the third, the likely voters, is going to give you a good base, kind of an accurate read. Well, we just had a poll that came out a few days ago. It was one of the big names. I think it was the Wall Street Journal. Might have been ABC, or maybe they do it jointly. But it was a very large, reputable name. And it showed Biden ahead by about 16 points. Well, I looked at it, and it said it was all registered voters. I said, well, that's meaningless because they didn't take the extra time and effort, and it does cost money to get it down to likely voters, number one. Number two, you have to look at the sample size. I hate to make it a lecture on statistical science, but for a population size of the United States, you need at least about 1,300 people who answer your poll to have a margin of error even as high as 3.5%. Well, this poll that I mentioned, first of all, they're registered voters, not likely voters, but they only polled about 800 people. So that means that the margin of error is more like 4.5%, 5%. Either way, 5 up or 5 down. So you have a 10 point margin of error, and they're giving you a number, but they're saying, well, it's in there somewhere. Well, is it here or is it here? Makes a big difference, leaving aside the fact that it's off because it's registered voters to begin with. And then the third thing you have to get right is, are they asking Democrats or Republicans? Well, a fair poll, you'd ask, both, and you'd get that proportion about the same as the likely voters. So if there's slightly more Democrats than Republicans in the likely voter category, it makes sense to ask slightly more Democrats rather. That's a fair sample. But they ask way more Democrats. They'll ask 58% Democrats, 42% Republicans.
So there you have it, guys. Jim Rickards. If some of you don't know who he is, I think I would recommend look him up. He is, and he's a forecaster as well. He's doing forecaster. He's in academia. Do a lot of research, and some of his predictions are pretty right on. So I mean, you don't have to take my word for it. Go do research on him. I know he doesn't get a lot of and does not get a lot of name recognition in a sense of he's out in YouTubing and stuff like that. But I mean, I think this is the guy that I think you should look into it. If you're more like independent thinker, entrepreneur and stuff, look him up. I mean, I've been following him for some time now as well. Not all the things that I agree with him, but he's right on a lot of different things. But anyway, what he said is right on the money. Why the pollsters are wrong in collecting samples. Basically, they're sampling the majority are Democrats. Their sample size is too small. They're sampling the people that are already likely, not likely, but the people that are already registered voting, so they know who they're going to vote for. So that, in a sense, is all flawed and wrong. And that's why they got these numbers that are ridiculous. I mean, obviously, if you sample a small size, you sample 54% of the Democrats. Obviously, you could have 54%, it's vice versa. So that's the flawed in all of this fake pollings and flawed pollings. This is crazy. I mean, they're doing that in 2016, and they're doing it again. Let's take another look at another forecaster in Allen Litchtman, and why I think he got it wrong as well. And let's see.
Predicted the outcome of every presidential race since 1984. Historian Allen Litchtman was one of the only election forecasters who predicted that Donald Trump would win the White House back in 2016. President Trump even sent him a note of congratulations on a copy of the Washington Post article about his prediction. Joining me now with his forecast for 2020, Allen Litchtman, distinguished professor of history at American University. Professor.
So here's another guy that kind of flip-flopped this time around. Allen Litchtman. He somehow predicted President Trump victory in 2016. He got some recognition. Like what they're saying is that he, predicted 9 straight time for president based on his 13 keys. But this time around, he predicted that President Trump is not going to win the re-election, and he laid out the 13 keys that I think Biden is going to be president. So check it out.
The hardest thing about being a forecaster, it's not knowing history, although you got no history. It's not knowing politics, so you got no politics. It's not knowing math, although you got no math. It's putting aside your own political preferences.
You're obviously a Democrat. You said Trump would win in 2016 when people thought you were crazy for choosing Trump.
It was extremely unpopular. I did get a note, and it said, "Professor, congrats, good call, Donald J. Trump." You want to see it?
You gotta see it.
There it is.
So let's talk about the 13th.
It's what we call a very robust model that's lasted through enormous change. The Civil War, the Great Depression, World War II. We just looked at patterns.
It's brilliant when you think about it.
Judgments here have to be objective and nonpartisan. All I need to do is say true or false. So if it's false, that's one key against them.
The party mandate, which side do you choose with that? No primary contest, incumbency, third party, short-term economy, long-term economy. 7 is policy change, social unrest, scandal number 9, foreign military failure, challenger's charisma, which is Biden, incumbent charisma.
That one I count as false.
You gotta have charisma for advertisers to say.
And what's your track record of predicting elections?
So, here's why I think his keys, Trump negative keys that he said. The last one is based on value and valuetainment. Bet David, he's pretty cool too as well. I'm following him too as well. Anyway, he said that key 12 incumbent charisma. He put a negative. Come on, Trump. It's once in a lifetime character. One in a once in a century character.
During his election campaign in 2016, spent a hell of a lot of time talking about China.
Right.
He was ridiculed for this. He was mocked for this. Most people who are not experts didn't even understand why he was talking about it. Somewhere in the periphery, people might have thought, well, he's talking about it because a lot of manufacturing jobs have gone to China.
Right.
But if you listen to some of his advisors, if you listen to some of the other people who talk about the threat that China poses to the rest of the world, economically more than anything, there are many more layers to it than that.
Right.
So lay that out for us.
Sure. Trump is a difficult to understand genius, and I look at the fact that he won in 2016. Of course, we're coming into the 2020 elections, and I predicted Trump victory in 2016. So I'm in that business of predictive analytics. I have Trump as a strong favorite to win again. But one of the factors I look at his opponents, the media, the Democrats, the progressives, and I say, did they learn anything? Did they learn anything in 2016 so that they can do something different today and perhaps beat him? And so far, the answer is no. They haven't learned a thing.
Well, they've doubled down on all the crazy cultural stuff that got them in trouble in 2016.
That's exactly right. They've doubled down. That's a good way to put it. But no sign at all that they've learned anything. But so I describe Trump's relationships with the media as the media are a herd of puppies, and Trump's the master with a red rubber ball. And he throws the ball, and all the puppies chase the ball. One of them fetches it and brings it back, and he says, very good. And he throws the ball over there, and they do the same thing. Meanwhile, he's doing serious stuff. So what's the ball? Stormy Daniels, impeachment, collusion, Russiagate. These things are distractions, no substance to any of them. The media keeps chasing them. Meanwhile, what is Trump actually doing? The largest tax cut in history. He is remaking the federal judiciary, appointing judges at an unprecedented rate, taking control of the courts. And it's from a list produced by the Federalist Society. They're very staunch, reliable conservatives. And they picked them in the early 40s because it's a lifetime appointment. So you'll be on the bench 40 years from now. The Trump judiciary is going to run the United States long after, well, at least after I'm gone. You guys are younger, but for maybe 4 decades or so in the future. Trump owns the Fed. Trump came in, there were 2 vacancies on the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve. Why were there 2 vacancies? Well, Obama was so sure that Hillary was going to win that he didn't bother with the appointments. He said, well, I'll give them to Hillary. She'll appoint some strong hands. So Trump got 2 seats right off the bat. Then there were a couple of resignations. So that kind of went up to 4 seats. And then one more since then, plus promoting Jay Powell from a governor where he already was a governor before Trump to chairman. So Lael Brainerd is going to end up as the only non-Trump appointee on the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve. She must feel like a hostage when she goes into the room. But the point is, so Trump owns the Federal Reserve. He's taking control of the judiciary. He's burning the Code of Federal Regulations. I mean, literally burning it down so you can actually have some freedom. And the largest tax cut in history, and confronting China, and that was your point, Constantine. So the press is chasing the rubber ball. He's doing big stuff. That's really going to be world historic. So as it relates to China, so
there you have it, guys. I mean, here's is more of a historian, bestsellers, Jim Rickards, talking about how Trump's doing big things, and yet, you know, media just blinded, basically covering up all the stuff that he's been doing, and just put a lot of distractions into the mainstream media. I mean, blinded people of what exactly is going on. I think if you really dig into deep into what Trump has been doing, you'd be amazed. So, all right. But anyway, here's what I got. Here is what he got it wrong. These keys, like I mentioned earlier, about the shifting toward nationalist movement that I don't think he accounted for. It's the shift in paradigm of the end of globalism and the rise of nationalists, and I mean, we are witnessing as we speak. I mean, in my lifetime, I never thought that in my lifetime the globalism will end and the rise of nationalists. I mean, if you look at, like I mentioned earlier, you looked everywhere. I mean, you looked around the world. You got European, the Brexit, start from the Brexit 2016 election. You trace it back to Germany, Poland, all the European country. It's pushing for, even in the sense of Russia, pushing for nationalists, Australia to a larger extent, pushing toward nationalist movements. And all these are nationalist movements that I don't think they're accounted for. And I think Jim Rickards did a pretty good point of telling us that some of the background battle that Trump's doing is geniuses in essence, like not a lot of people talking about it, appointing supreme judges that are conservative in the sense of constitutional rights for all of us to protect and set up foundations for nationalist movement that we're seeing happening as we speak. Some of these will serve in the lifetime appointees, serving 40 years plus, and they also appointing the judiciary as well. So control of the Federal Reserve is also another genius play in that sense. So yeah. So I digress a little bit as far as incumbent charisma and character. Trump doing a lot of stuff in the background that a lot of these media and a lot of these guys don't talk about, but he is doing in the background to protect American nationalist agenda, constitutional rights in that sense. So yeah, I digress a little bit, but let's get back to these 13 keys to the White House by Alan Riker, and why I think they're completely dead wrong, and that that the shift paradigm, that he's not aware of, or still continue of barking the same tunes, that I think lost touch with reality as well. So let's get back to his 13 keys, and then we'll finish off with what bonus that I have for you guys, and why I think that confidently think that that Trump will win this this election, and not only electoral but the popular vote as well. Sorry. And let's take a look at his some of his keys, key 5, key 6, and as well as key 8 and 9, and why I think he got it wrong. And some of these keys that he put out is essentially manufacture. What I mean by that is planned, and it's not organic. So you can't base your prediction and put a negative on President Trump if some of these, if not all of these, keys are manufactured and um, are planned politically politically motivated, like the economy, for example. You can't blame that on President Trump for COVID-19, which was manufactured from China, and basically once in a lifetime pandemic that short term, yeah, affect economy, but long term wise, it's not. What Trump did in 3.5 years is historic, and you can't just negate that because of the pandemic. I think that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to negate his economic prosperity because of the COVID. But let's see what we have here.
With the economy. Remember the dire predictions of what would happen if Donald Trump were to win the presidency?
Remember what he said way back on Election Day? Quote, "It really does now look like President Donald J. Trump, and markets are plunging. When might we expect them to recover? A first pass answer is never."
Well, a funny thing happened on the way to the Depression.
I think the economy is doing absolutely great, and it's particularly reaching into populations that heretofore have had very bad problems in terms of jobs, unemployment, and the opportunities that come with full employment. So African American unemployment is at its lowest level. I give President Trump, and I've said this before on Squawk Box, I give President a lot of credit for moving the economy in a positive direction that's benefiting a large number of Americans.
Historically low unemployment for blacks, historically low unemployment for Asians, historically low unemployment for Hispanics. Tough to beat that, and that's the economy. Now, what about foreign policy? Remember the dire predictions by John Kerry, Obama's Secretary of State? You can't do a peace deal with the Arab states without involving the Palestinians. Remember that?
There will be no separate peace between Israel and the Arab world. I want to make that very clear to all of you. I've heard several prominent politicians in Israel sometimes saying, well, the Arab world's in a different place now. We just have to reach out to them and we could work some things with the Arab world and we'll deal with the Palestinians. No, 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 and no. I can tell you that reaffirmed even in the last week as I have talked to leaders of the Arab community. There will be no advance and separate peace with the Arab world without the Palestinian process and Palestinian peace. Everybody needs to understand that. That is a hard reality.
Oops. Playing out hours after history was made at the White House today. Israel, the UAE, and Bahrain together at a signing ceremony celebrating the Abraham Accords, the deal normalizing relations between the countries. The Palestinians calling the deal a betrayal, rockets fired from Gaza. And here's our chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz, tonight.
On the White House South Lawn, before a packed crowd, many not wearing a mask, history was indeed made today.
We'll sign a treaty of peace, diplomatic relations, and full normalization.
Israel's prime minister and the foreign ministers from Bahrain and the UAE joining President Trump to officially normalize diplomatic relations with Israel, the first Arab countries to do so in decades.
And the president moved the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Remember the predictions?
So as you can see, key 5, key 6 debunked with high low unemployment, historic level of prosperity. Again, I mentioned earlier, it's not the pandemic. You can't blame it on the pandemic, but reality matters that 3.5 years of under President Trump, you got highest prosperity, lowest unemployment rate. So you can't discredit that. And and already debunked the 12. Let's look at as well as the 11 key 11 foreign military success. I don't know if this guy Allen Litchtman is aware or he live on a rock. I mean, historic event that peace treaty that President Trump did that you saw earlier. That's historic as well. And let's since we're at it, let's go over the key 8 and key 9 and the social unrest and scandal. against Key 9 scandal is basically it's a hoax. We already know that it's a hoax. I'm not sure why they even put a key in there. And he's still impeachment, collusion, and all that stuff. It's all a hoax. People are are aware of that, and he still put it up there. I have no idea. But anyway, as far as Key 8 goes, social unrest, he's talking about Antifa and BLM. Now that is a socialist movement that people are already aware of, and it's not a it's not because of the administration. It's not because of Donald Trump. It's because of an incident that happened, and they pushed that into and propagated into as social injustice. But that in itself is a plan. It's a plan coordinated. In essence, a plan coordinated, politically propagated by the media, in my opinion. So it's not because of, say, economy is bad. People are fed up with the administration, of the people out and protesting, but it's actually a segment of a plan, politically no motivated, and it's already debunked. Socialist movements where most Americans don't really pushing. Actually, it actually backfired. Push some of these socialist movement. Push some of these more independent, undecided voter. Push towards toward American nationalist movement as well. So I want to bring attention to you guys, and get you guys all excited and cheer up about that. I promised early in the video that I'm going to bring it to you. So this news article came from Fox 4 days ago. You can see here, Trump gains in Florida polls despite Democrats lead in early voting. Nearly 2.7 million Democrats have already cast their vote, but Trump leads in the polls. So you might want to ask, what's significant about that? Well, as you remember, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, Trump they had Biden's lead in double digit, and now as we get closer, where the actual polls shows, here's President Trump is leading for the first time in Florida polling. This is real polling people that already voted. Is that Trump is up close to 0.5% lead over Democrat nominee. As you can see, these the fake pollster had him at over double-digit lead, and now the actual polling a week out showing Trump is lead almost 0.5%. Now, why do you think that's so significant? Well, one thing is that nearly 2.7 million Democrats have already voted. Now, let's look back at 2016. The margin of victory, Hillary Clinton carries the state with 4.5 million. So, 4.5 million for Hillary 1 week out. Nearly 2.7 million already voted. So the majority of the Democrats have already cast their vote. But yet, cast a vote for Biden. But yet, they're still 0.5 point behind. So this time around, 2016, if you looked at this, Trump narrowly beat Hillary in 2016 by 1.2%. Now, this time around, if you look at this down in paragraph down here, this time around, 2016, Hillary was up 2.3%. But today, Biden is down close to 0.5%. So I can confidently say that, even this, when Hillary had a week out, had a 2.3 point lead, Trump pulled behind and won by I believe Trump won by, let me see here, 1.2%. So Trump ended up carrying the state by 1.2%. So as you can see, Trump already up close to 0.5%. So he is 0.5%, like 0.4%. He carried the state victory 1.2, so he got 1.6%, and the majority of his base hasn't voted yet. So that's 3.9. So 3.9 is the magic number. I think it's over 3.5. So Trump will carry, will win Florida by 3.9%. So give and take, 3.5, 3.9 is my prediction. So that's great news, guys. I mean, they are basically scared, panic mode for Florida, and there's a reason behind why they're so panicked about Trump taking Florida. But let's take a look at Trafalgar Group, what they have to say about on their poll as for Florida. So they had Florida Trump victory at 4.9 to 6. 4.96 to Biden 46 to 9. 2.7% Trump will carry Florida. So I had Trump at 3.5. So it's not much difference, but I think Trump will push over the 50% for sure. He'll win the popular in Florida for sure. So so again, why I think Florida is the key to the White House. You don't have to take my word for it.
With each other. All right, let's dive right in here. Trump is absolutely killing it in Florida. Why is this important? It is important because in every presidential election since 1972, for the exception of the 1992 campaign when you had Ross Perot as the spoiler, in every presidential election since 1972, he who won Florida went on to what? You got it, win the general election. As a matter of fact, every election since 96, every presidential election, whoever's won Florida has gone on to win the general election. The general trend is if you win Florida, you've won sort of the demographic, particularly white working class around the Panhandle area, to give you Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, Pennsylvania, perhaps even Minnesota as well. So if you win Florida, you tend to win the Rust Belts. That's just generally the pattern. And so,
hey guys, thanks for watching my video. I hope you enjoy my content. You know, I just put it out there. I think it need to be told, and you know, stuff that that's going on. It need to be bring forth and have a conversation. And all right, guys, if you want to support my channel, do like and subscribe to my video, and that will help me out tremendously. And hope I can put together another video here fairly soon. So cheers.